This is how the richest black women in Houston actually live. And the list only gets crazier as we move. We're talking about a woman who built a $17.5 billion infrastructure empire, and almost nobody knows her name. A woman who spent 20 years as a black female anesthesiologist while raising kids as a single mother, and a woman who bought back the entire block she grew up in. Let's begin the countdown. Number 10. Latia Norwood. Most people spend years trying to find the idea. The one product, the one business, the one concept that's going to be their entire identity and their entire income. Latia Norwood looked at that approach and essentially said, "Why would I do that?" She runs 3 businesses at the same time, on purpose. Ideal Pet Grooming, Serenity Studios Photography, and the popular Popcorn Bar, each with both mobile and physical locations across Houston. And before you mentally file this under cute small business owner, consider what that actually takes operationally. 3 separate supply chains, 3 separate customer bases, 3 separate staffing realities. Running one small business competently is genuinely hard. Running 3 simultaneously at a level where you become a regular face on Great Day Houston means something different is happening here. The Popcorn Bar is the one that gets people, because it sounds the most unlikely, right? And yet, gourmet popcorn is a real market with real margins, and she built it alongside her son, which means she didn't just create revenue, she created a template, a model that her family can learn from, iterate on, and scale beyond her. That's not a side hustle. That's deliberate intergenerational architecture disguised as a snack business. The waiting for the big idea approach fails most people because the big idea almost never shows up on schedule. Norwood just started building, stacked enough good ideas together, and woke up one day running something that looks suspiciously like an empire. Sometimes the portfolio becomes the vision, and by the time most people are still waiting for their moment, she's already 3 businesses deep. Number 9. Margot Jordan. Here's something worth sitting with. Right now, there are millions of kids going through genuine psychological distress, anxiety, cratering self-esteem, academic pressure that their parents' generation simply did not face at the same intensity, and the traditional mental health system is nowhere near equipped to handle the volume. There aren't enough therapists. The ones that exist are expensive. The wait lists are long. And for a lot of families, especially in underserved communities, the stigma alone is enough to keep the door closed permanently. Margot Jordan looked at that gap and made a decision that's easier to describe than to actually execute. She decided to use artificial intelligence to do what human capacity couldn't scale to cover. Her startup, Enrichly, combines AI and behavioral science to build self-esteem and improve academic performance in young students, reaching kids through technology in a way that doesn't require a weekly appointment, a copay, or a waiting room. That work landed her on the 2025 Inc. Female Founders 500 list, alongside a cohort of Houston female founders that collectively generated $9 billion in revenue. $9 billion from a single group of women, in one city, in a year. Houston gets talked about as an energy city, a NASA city, a medical center city. But that $9 billion figure is telling a completely different story about what's actually being built here right now. And Jordan is one of the clearest proof points of it. What makes her story genuinely compelling beyond the numbers is the path. She transitioned from personal challenges into high-tech founder, which in practice means she rebuilt her own life while simultaneously constructing a company in one of the most technically demanding and chronically underfunded spaces in all of tech. The Inc.'s 500 recognition is real, but it also feels like chapter 1 of something considerably bigger. Number 8. Winell Herron. Let's talk about HEB for a second, because if you're not from Texas, you might not fully grasp what this company actually is to people here. This isn't a grocery store. This is a deeply embedded cultural institution that Texans have a genuinely emotional relationship with. The kind of loyalty that multinational retail giants have spent hundreds of millions of dollars trying to buy and consistently failed to manufacture. During the 2021 Texas power grid failure, HEB had distribution trucks moving before most government agencies had finished drafting their emergency response memos. People in Texas don't leave HEB. That's just not a thing that happens. Winell Herron, as Senior Vice President of Public Affairs, Diversity, and Environmental Affairs, is the person architecting how that institution shows up for the communities it operates inside. And at HEB's scale, 116,000 employees, operations across the entire state. Showing up for communities is not a marketing phrase. It's a logistics operation with a philanthropic budget attached. She's directing hunger relief strategy. She's shaping disaster recovery response. She's sitting on the boards of the Houston Zoo, the Houston Museum of African American Culture, the Greater Houston Women's Chamber of Commerce Hall of Fame, and the NAACP Corporate Advisory Council at the state level. Each of those positions carries real influence over how resources move in this city, and she holds all of them simultaneously while running a major corporate division. Here's the thing about operating at this level of institutional power that most people don't talk about. The influence isn't visible in the way startup founder influence is visible. There's no funding round announcement, no product launch, no Forbes cover. It accumulates quietly through decisions, relationships, and resource allocation over years. By the time most people notice the impact, the decisions that created it were made a decade ago. Winell Herron has been making those decisions for a long time, and Houston looks the way it does partly because of it. Number 7. Stephanie Murphy. Houston has been called Space City since 1961, and for most of that history, the story was essentially one entity: NASA. Government missions, federal budgets, congressional appropriations, and the particular rhythm of an industry where your biggest customer is also your regulator and your landlord. That model built extraordinary things. It also moved at the pace of government procurement, which is to say, not quickly. That era is giving way to something fundamentally different, and Stephanie Murphy is one of the people actively writing the transition. As CEO and executive chairman of Aegis Aerospace, she runs a firm providing spaceflight product development and engineering services to both government and commercial clients. And the commercial side of that equation is where the growth story lives. She sits on the Texas Space Commission Board and the Texas Aerospace Research and Space Economy Consortium Executive Committee, which means she doesn't just participate in commercial space from inside one company. She has direct influence over how the state of Texas deploys its strategic investments across the entire sector. Think about what the commercial space industry actually looks like right now. SpaceX normalized reusable rockets and cut launch costs by something like 90% from what they were 2 decades ago. That cost compression opened the door for an entirely new category of companies: satellite operators, research firms, defense contractors, aerospace engineering consultancies that simply couldn't exist at the old price points. Aegis is operating inside that newly opened space in a market that generated $9 billion in revenue in 2024 and is growing faster than almost any other sector in the economy. The shift from government-run to commercially driven space services is going to be one of the defining economic stories of the next 30 years. And it's being written, in part, from Houston, which makes complete sense and is also a little bit poetic. Number 6. Dr. Kelly Leblanc. Someone told Dr. Kelly Leblanc, directly and without apparent embarrassment, that black female anesthesiologists didn't last long in this field. Just said it out loud. Like it was a fact she should find helpful. She filed it away and spent the next 20 years proving it was wrong with such thoroughness that the original statement now reads like a setup to a punchline. Today, she's a physician partner at United States Anesthesia Partners, the largest anesthesia group in Houston. Chief of Anesthesia at Houston Methodist Baytown. Senior leader at Houston Methodist Cypress. She got there as a single mother who was married at 20 and had her first child at 21, which means she built this career without the luxury of the clean, uninterrupted professional runway that most people assume is required to reach this level of medicine. She did it with kids, with the specific financial and logistical reality that single parenthood creates, and with an industry periodically reminding her, directly, that people who look like her tend not to make it. Now let's talk about what physician partnership at a major anesthesia group actually means financially, because most people underestimate this dramatically. Anesthesiologists are among the highest compensated physicians in medicine to begin with. Add partnership equity in the largest group in one of the largest medical markets in the country, and you are talking about compensation packages that comfortably reach 7 figures annually. This is serious, structural, compounding wealth. Not a high salary, but an ownership position in a major medical enterprise. And Dr. Leblanc is now building the infrastructure to ensure she's not the only one. Mentorship programs, sponsorship pipelines, pathways designed specifically to bring more Black women into the rooms where she currently stands. The woman who was told she wouldn't last is now designing the system that decides who gets trained next. There's a certain poetry in that which she clearly recognizes and fully intends to capitalize on. Number 5. Argentina James. Okay, real talk. If I asked you to name the most powerful person in Houston's infrastructure and economic development space over the last 30 years, what name would come to mind? You'd probably think of developers, politicians, maybe a few executives from the energy sector. Almost certainly not the founder of a public relations firm based in the city. And that is exactly the point. Argentina James and her firm, Hilde Public Relations, have managed and supported $17.5 billion worth of infrastructure and economic development projects in Houston. Not consulted on the periphery, not handled the press releases after decisions were already made. Managed. Before Hilde, she was VP of Public Affairs at the Port of Houston Authority, where the initiatives she directed generated over $2 billion in economic development independently. Her client list reads like a blueprint of who actually runs this city: TXDOT, Metro, the City of Houston, Hensel Phelps. These are the organizations deciding what gets built, where it gets built, and how billions of public and private dollars get allocated across a metropolitan area of 7 million people. Argentina James has a seat at those conversations. She has had that seat for over 3 decades. She's raised $75 million for local nonprofits, including $1.2 million from a single Texas Southern University Tiger Bowl event, which is either a testament to her fundraising skill or evidence that she can simply make rooms full of people do what she says. And honestly, it might be both. The reason most people have never heard of her is the same reason her power is real. The people who are actually moving $17.5 billion of infrastructure decisions don't need a public profile to do it. The decisions are made before most people know there's a decision to be made. That's not obscurity, and that's a very specific and very deliberate kind of authority. And the fact that she operates at this scale while remaining almost invisible in public conversations about Houston wealth is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting power moves on this entire list. Number 4. Dr. Kathy C. Flanigan. The Houston Chronicle called her the well-heeled doctor, which works on 2 levels: the signature stilettos she's become known for, and the fact that she has genuinely healed her way to the absolute top of Houston's psychiatric world while building a portfolio of influence that most people would need 3 separate careers to accumulate. Dr. Kathy C. Flanigan has been in private psychiatric practice in Houston's Upper Kirby neighborhood since 1990, specializing in mood disorders. That foundation alone, 35-plus years of private practice in one of Houston's most affluent medical corridors, represents serious financial infrastructure. But the private practice is almost the least interesting thing about her at this point. She's been a national pharmaceutical speaker for 25 years, which means she's spent a quarter century as one of the faces the industry trusts to educate physicians across the country on psychiatric medication, a role that comes with both a substantial platform and substantial compensation. She consults for the NFL. She has consulted for the National Basketball Players Association. She chairs interfaith ministries. She sits on the board of the Menninger Clinic, one of the most prestigious and historically significant psychiatric institutions in the entire country. Governor Perry appointed her to public service. President George W. Bush appointed her to public service. And then during COVID-19, Houston's mayor appointed her to chair the city's Health Equity Response Task Force. Read that list again slowly. NFL, NBPA, presidential appointment. Gubernatorial appointment. Mayor's Task Force. Board of one of America's great psychiatric institutions. All while maintaining a private practice, wearing incredible shoes, and being publicly recognizable enough that the Houston Chronicle gave her a nickname. That is not a psychiatrist with an interesting side career. That is an institution of Houston civic and medical life that also happens to see patients. The well-heeled doctor is underselling it, if anything. Number 3. Eileen Lawal. Here's a genuinely fun experiment. Go ask the next 10 people you encounter in Houston to name the city's wealthiest black women. Ask 20 if you want a bigger sample. You will almost certainly get Beyonce. You might get Lizzo. You will almost certainly not get Eileen Lawal. And the gap between how much power she actually holds and how little of the public's attention she occupies is one of the most instructive dynamics on this entire list. Eileen co-owns 80% of KMAC International alongside her husband, Case Lawal. KMAC is a Houston-based energy conglomerate that reported peak revenues of $2.43 billion on the Black Enterprise 100 list. The company operates across the entire energy value chain: exploration, production, crude oil trading, natural gas, electrical power, with a global footprint that extends deep into Africa, where the Lawals secured strategic land rights and partnered with Conoco to enter the oil sector in the early 1990s. That pivot from agricultural commodities into petroleum is the decision that put the family in billionaire territory. Case Lawal ranks among the 4 wealthiest black individuals in America. Eileen owns 80% of the company with him, and she is not, in any sense, a silent partner. She manages the family's civic and social positioning across Houston's elite philanthropic landscape. She chairs major fundraising events. She has directed millions toward HIV/AIDS research and orphanage support across Africa. She co-founded the Case and Eileen Lawal Center for International Business Development at Texas Southern University with a $1 million personal endowment. She operates with the sophistication and deliberateness of someone who understands exactly what she has, exactly how she wants to use it, and exactly how much of it she wants the general public to be tracking at any given moment. The answer to that last part, it turns out, is not much. And that tells you everything about the difference between wealth that needs an audience and wealth that simply doesn't. Number 2. Tina Knowles-Lawson. There is a version of the Beyoncé story that starts with talent shows and destiny and a voice that was always going to find its way to the world regardless of circumstances. It's a good story. It's also incomplete in a way that does a quiet injustice to the woman who actually made it possible. Tina Knowles was running Headliners, a hair salon in Houston's 3rd Ward, before any of the global acclaim arrived. And that salon was doing 2 things simultaneously that most people have never properly credited. First, it was generating the actual money, the physical, real-world revenue, that funded costumes, travel, vocal training, and the years of performance before any of it started paying returns. Not family wealth from somewhere else. Not investor money. Salon money. 3rd Ward money, reinvested into a dream that hadn't proven itself yet. Second, it was the environment where Tina was developing the aesthetic intelligence and entrepreneurial instincts that would eventually produce not 1, but 2 global fashion labels: House of Darien and Miss Tina by Tina Knowles. What she did with those labels is worth understanding specifically. She didn't just translate Houston style for a mainstream market. She took the 3rd Ward aesthetic, the Southern glamour, the Creole color, the particular brand of unapologetic self-presentation that this neighborhood carries in its cultural DNA, and built it into fashion that an international market embraced before it even had the vocabulary to explain why it resonated. That's not luck, that's taste. Operating at a level most people in fashion spend their entire careers trying to reach. She co-founded the Waco Theater Center to build arts infrastructure in the community that raised her. She talks openly and consistently about black wealth circulation in the 3rd Ward, not as an abstract concept, but as a specific, transactional, ongoing commitment. The philosophy she operates from, come back, invest back, own the neighborhood that built you instead of simply escaping it, is the same philosophy that runs through everything the Knowles-Carter family has constructed across 2 generations. There is no number 1 on this list without Tina Knowles building the foundation first, brick by brick, in a hair salon on a street most people outside Houston have never heard of. Once you understand that, the story of who sits at the top of this list starts looking less like a miracle and more like the inevitable product of a plan that was already in motion long before the rest of the world was paying attention. Number 1. Beyoncé Knowles-Carter. 3rd Ward, Houston. church choirs and local talent competitions, and a mother who ran a hair salon to fund the dream before the dream had a return on investment. That's the origin story. Where it currently sits is an estimated net worth of $800 million, with a business architecture sophisticated enough that analysts tracking it aren't asking if she crosses $1 billion. They're modeling when. And here's the thing about that number that most people miss. It's not primarily a music number anymore. The music is the foundation and the engine and the cultural gravity that makes everything else possible. But the actual financial structure built on top of it is something considerably more complex and considerably more interesting than a recording artist with good brand deals. Parkwood Entertainment is the infrastructure underneath all of it. A fully integrated management, production, and brand partnership operation that gives her ownership and control over her creative output and commercial relationships in a way that most entertainers in her industry never achieve, because most of them are too focused on the art to build the architecture simultaneously. Beyoncé did both. Parkwood is why the deals she signs look different from the deals other artists sign. It's why she restructured away from Adidas on Ivy Park when the relationship wasn't serving the brand properly. Because she could, because she owned the decision. Most artists don't own that decision. Ivy Park is now being rebuilt as a fully independent entity, and the people paying closest attention to how Rihanna's Fenty Beauty captured its market are drawing direct lines to where Beyoncé's beauty venture Sacred is being positioned. If that comparison holds, and there are real structural reasons to think it might, the billion-dollar threshold doesn't require a particularly optimistic set of assumptions. She holds a $200 million Malibu compound. She has 35 Grammy Awards, the most of any artist in Recording Academy history. She is, by any reasonable measure, one of the most financially disciplined entertainers on the planet. Not just talented, not just famous, but disciplined in the specific way that separates people who make extraordinary money from people who build extraordinary wealth. Those are genuinely different things, and the distance between them is Parkwood Entertainment. But the piece of this story that matters most in the context of this particular list is what she does with it. The Houston connection in her public identity is not branding. It is not the obligatory "remember where you came from" narrative that celebrities perform in interviews and then quietly compartmentalize. During Hurricane Harvey, the Knowles-Carter family had millions deployed in direct community aid while the federal response was still being organized. Her investment in the Third Ward is documented, ongoing, and transactional in the most literal sense. Buying property, funding institutions, creating economic infrastructure in the neighborhood that created her. Buy the block you grew up on is not a metaphor in this family. It is an operating principle backed by actual real estate transactions and actual dollar amounts. AMD, that's a wrap on the 10 richest black women in Houston. Which of these stories genuinely surprised you? Drop it in the comments. Because honestly, this list has a few answers that I think are going to catch people off guard. And for more deep dives into the people quietly building black wealth across America, stay locked into Black Status.